Welcome to Genomics in Java, a place for great science conversations shared over our favorite cup. This morning, we're joined by Dr. Greg Cooper, faculty investigator here at the HudsonAlpha Institute for Biotechnology. Good morning, Greg, and welcome.
Morning.
So this morning, I am having a family favorite, half hot chocolate and half coffee. So what would we typically find in your favorite cup?
Just straight black coffee for me, but every morning need that cup to get going. So
get you up and get you moving in the
That's
morning.
right.
What are some of the interests that your lab has?
Fundamentally, the really big picture is trying to understand how our DNA works and how it shapes who we are and what we look like and what we do, and especially what makes us sick. And so fundamentally, we are interested in people's DNA and how that DNA shapes their lives. And of course, as I mentioned, the most impactful thing we can do with that is understanding how it makes us sick, in the hopes that we can do something about that to either prevent or ameliorate or otherwise mitigate the problems of a lot of illnesses that do have genetic factors. And so, so that's our big focus, is on understanding human genetics and trying to apply it in useful ways that makes people's lives better.
What led you to that particular area of interest?
So in college, I sort of said I'm going to be a biology major, but then I was taking math classes and CS classes and even a business class, and I just sort of had a wide range of things, but really biology and math are what stuck with me, and then that turned out to be a really natural combination. As today, as a lot of folks will know, we're so data driven, and we're so dependent on computation and statistics and informatics, that biology and math combination turned out to be, again, I didn't set it out, I wasn't planning it that way, it just sort of worked out that way, and it was very fortunate for me.
I love that combination as you think about that broad diversity of background that helps you to be able to adjust and move to all of the new things that are happening in this field. As we think about applying all of those skills, what does that look like for your lab? Can you tell us a little bit more about one of your recent publications or one of the findings that your lab has had?
Sure. So as I mentioned, one of our big emphasis areas is understanding how DNA contributes to disease, and a particular interest to us is understanding children that have developmental disabilities. So these are things where you think of, so autism is an example of a condition that some children have that affects the way that they behave, the way they interact with other children, the way they learn. But there's a whole range of other challenges that kids have, ranging from seizures to severe learning disabilities, intellectual disabilities. Sometimes they have growth problems. So a whole range of problems that kids develop, and they're often genetic in origin. And so that's a very major focus for our lab, that particular set of phenotypes of conditions that we're interested in. And one of the things that we've done, historically, we've worked with pediatricians and clinicians all across the state and really all across the South, but one in particular, Martina Bebin, who's been working with us for almost, 8 years now, which is amazing.
Has it been 8 years now? Wow.
But she's a wonderful neurologist here in Huntsville that sees a lot of kids that have these kinds of conditions. And we've been working with her to apply the latest and greatest genomic technology to try to find those genetic factors that might be contributing to the symptoms that are affecting those children. And so we've been partnering with her for a long time now, and we've worked with, I think it's probably 700 or 800 children over those years. And for many of them, and it's sort of, this is a match of it's an important need for these families, for Martina to help them, but it's also, as our technology gets better and better, we feel like we can do a better job at finding things that are relevant. And so the most recent technology platform innovation that we're really excited about is a new way to sequence people's DNA. And to skip over some of the details, it's essentially a way to look at, instead of looking at small little chunks of DNA and trying to stitch the pieces back together like a puzzle, like a jigsaw puzzle, this is a way where you look at very, very long stretches and you get a much more accurate picture. And so what we're doing now is we're trying to, part of the technology is a little bit slow and costly right now, but it's really powerful. And there's a lot of folks here in the building that are trying very hard to make that technology, because it's so good and so exciting, to make it faster and cheaper. And so as that happens, we want to start testing it. And so we've been working with some of the children that we believe have a genetic condition that explains what their symptoms are, but for which we just haven't been able to find anything, right? So we've done every test we can think of, and we're striking out, but we're convinced that there's something that we can find that's going to be helpful. And so we've recently performed a study on it's just six children. They were 6 kids that were identified here in Huntsville that have a condition that we believe might be genetic, that we've done all this testing on, and that we applied this really exciting technology to. And for 2 of those 6, we were able to find something, and it was just really, really exciting to see this sort of marriage of, as we make technology better, we can find more and more things about our own about. Of course, for these children and these families, it's very important, impactful information. At least we hope so. We tell the family about it. We counsel them. We try to give them pointers for how to use it. But then also that we're seeing things that have been in that child's DNA this whole time. We just couldn't see it, and now we can sort of see it. It's just kind of switching on a light bulb. It really is exciting. So, so this paper, where we hope this is the first 6 of 6,000, right? We're starting to how do we ramp this up? And it's a really, really powerful technology we're excited about.
What an exciting time for science and for the promises that brings for being able to find answers for those families who've been on such a long diagnostic odyssey, and the power for that.
Yep.
I love hearing all of the collaboration amongst not only your lab, but across the Institute, and being able to continue to improve this technology. Mm-hmm. That's just, like you said, it's just so exciting to hear, and just such a wonderful thing for these families and these children, and I imagine for questions that we haven't even thought to ask yet.
Absolutely. We felt like this is the key that's going to unlock a lot of doors. And it mentioned collaboration. This is very much one of the reasons that we came to HudsonAlpha, that my wife and I, who are both faculty members here, came, was just that spirit of collaboration was very evident, and the sort of idea of being committed to marrying the latest and greatest cutting-edge technologies to answer important questions that can really impact human beings. And so we benefited. So Jane Grimmett and Jeremy Schmutz are faculty members here that have been longtime leaders in using, they focus mostly on plant genomes, looking at these complex genomes that a lot of important plant species have. And so they had been really pushing the edge on the technology front, and so it was very natural for us to work together on taking this technology and applying it to some of the clinical questions that my group had. So it's very fortunate to be here for that.
Thinking about all of that collaboration and looking down the road the next decade, what do you think are the biggest promises and challenges that you have in your field?
Sure, so that's a great question. There's a whole bunch of them, right? But obviously there's still technology challenges. We still need to make things in terms of just how we analyze a person's DNA. That continually needs to be cheaper and faster and better. And so that's one whole set of challenges that we're very focused on. But a big one is actually sort of unrelated to how we look at a person's DNA. It's actually how we in terms of physically how we read it, but how we interpret it, how we understand the information that we get. And just as one example, so, science is intrinsically dependent upon reproducibility, right? If I observe something, as scientists, you want to say, can I observe it again? And that's fundamentally what we do, right? You make a hypothesis and you test it and you show that it works over and over again, and that's how you convince yourself you found something real, and something true. And so one of the challenges that we face in human genetics is this notion of rare disease. So a lot of the conditions that we can identify, that we can diagnose, it's 1 in a million people or even fewer on the planet have that one condition. And so that one of the challenges becomes, okay, I found something interesting in a person's DNA. How do I convince myself? How do I convince the world? How do I just come to believe that what I found is real is real? And so one of the ways that we've done that, and because, for example, you could sequence the entirety of Huntsville and you're not going to find another family or person that has that same condition. So one of the things, and this is where the internet and social media have been really pretty amazing, is this notion of sharing data across the whole world. So that's something that our group has had a lot of success with, is when we find an interesting finding that we can't prove anything about but we think could be interesting, there are tools now that essentially, like Craigslist, you say, hey, I'm interested in this gene, and if another geneticist in Germany or Japan or wherever says, I'm interested in the same gene, then you get an email and says, you two should chat. And this has turned out to be a really awesome set of tools, it's just, to me, that's the challenge, is how do we come up with these 1 in a million findings and turn them into robust scientific discoveries? And again, I think it's an opportunity in the sense of we have tools to do this. The internet, social media, and families, in fact, drive a lot of this. The moms and dads of these kids that have these rare conditions have been leaders in driving to assemble these groups and get scientists together. So it's a really important source of that. So it's a challenge, but it's also an exciting time because we have ways to meet that challenge.
With all of the potential and possibilities, all of the families that you guys have been able to help, what do you think you would say is your greatest contribution to science so far in your career?
That's a great question. So so obviously one of the things that I love the most about what we do is the fact that it's real people on the other end, and it's important. It's information that has an immediate, direct clinical benefit to these families, and we've had the privilege of meeting some of them, and it's just so awesome to be able to shake their hand. Obviously not in COVID shake hand, but over the years, right, you get to meet families, you get to talk with them, you get to learn a little bit about them, and they become a lot more than just a number on a spreadsheet. That frankly has been really gratifying and powerful for me. I suppose if I had wanted to do that more consistently, I would have gone in to be a doctor or something, but I think it's a little taste of what a doctor feels like when they do something that actually, you had a problem and I did something, the doctor did something to help you deal with that problem, and now you're feeling better. So that to me has been just an awesome feeling that I frankly didn't expect when I got into science and research. I didn't really anticipate doing that, but nevertheless, that's a huge and just really wonderful kind of sense that you're doing something that has a real impact for families. But I think that the biggest thing that I feel like we've been able to do is to be sort of trailblazers in saying that this technology is ready to be applied to human beings to directly make their lives better. Because I think there's always been the sense of, and I think doctors and clinical medicine moves slowly, and I think for good reason, right? People aren't guinea pigs in experiments, so you have to be very mindful of that. But there is this real potential, and the impact of the new technology is so large, and so I just think it's been an important contribution that we're sort of laying out. Here's a path that you can do this. You can use the latest and greatest tech, but still be safe and conservative and careful in how you use it. So I just feel like that has been a really an important part of what we've done here, and obviously getting getting the state of Alabama, frankly, I feel like we've been leaders in moving Alabama into this genomic frontier. We're now working all across the Southeast. We're working with hospitals that were UAB and in hospitals in New Orleans and Jackson, Mississippi, and University of Louisville, and just trying to make genomics a common part of clinical medicine for children that have these kinds of conditions where it really makes sense.
I'm so thankful for researchers like you and for the research labs that you collaborate with, hearing the difference that you make to the field and pushing that envelope and the difference that you make in those families' lives every day. I love being able to work alongside individuals that have that passion and are making that impact on the world. So thank you.
Thanks,
and I know I thank you from all of the families that have and will be impacted by these technologies that you're working to improve.
Yeah, we're for. I feel so lucky that HudsonAlpha is such a great place to do this, and the partnerships we've had, and the families are amazing. So it's a very fortunate. I'm in a great spot, surrounded by great people, is the bottom line.
What an incredible and exciting time to be alive, to be in this world, and to watch this field advance. And so until next time, keep the conversation going and stay curious.